Good afternoon, Mayor, council members. The first item on our agenda is a proposal from Sculpture in the South. They reached out to me recently in regards to a possible sculpture that they would like to place at Saul Alexander Playground. Prior to them, Beth, if you don't mind, go ahead and put it up on screen. Thank you. So prior to them fundraising, they just wanted to bring it to council and make sure that this bench and sculpture was something that town council was in favor of and would support. You can see the location there at Saul Alexander. It's where the star is where we would propose placing it. It's kind of where that horseshoe is out front. And I know that they do have a representative here tonight if you have any questions for Sculpture in the South as well.
I'd like to ask Dora Ann, if you'd like to speak. Where's she? Oh.
Thank you, Bob. My name is Dora Ann Reeves, and I have been long active with Sculpture in the South since its inception. As most of you know, we have placed a variety of sculptures of people and animals throughout the town. And this one is a little out of a lot of people's comfort zone. I like that. A lot of us are a little bit out of our comfort zone when we are dealing with differently abled people. We are not sure how do we talk to them, but we talk to them just like we talk to each other. I think that this piece is a good piece for Saul Alexander Park, which does have the Miracle Field there, and it will allow differently able children to see that even bananas have different abilities. So I hope that you will approve it for placement there. Thank you.
Dora Ann, thank you. And I think it's wonderful. But I still like the roller skate and banana.
You can like it roll.
Mr. Chair,
I'm comfortable with that.
Mr. Chair, I'd just like to bring up a point here. I've thought about it for some time. I think I've mentioned to a couple of people. We've got a beautiful town. We've got a lot of people here from different groups of people. We've got the indigenous people, the natives who've been here for a long time. One of those is my wife, of course. I think it would be a good idea if we tried to be more broad-based with some of the sculptures that we do. For instance, as you know, in the Brownsville area, we've got a multiplicity of people of different races. But what we could do, I think, would be appropriate. We've got Wassamassaw Park, which is Wassamassaw Park, which is obviously named for the indigenous people who are here. And if we could get someone to contribute a statue that would fit, you know, the heritage that they are proud of, I think it would be a good thing. I think all of the parks, we've been trying to place the statues and sculptures in these parks, and I think that's a good idea. But it's something we can think about maybe as we move into the new year. Try to think in terms of trying to be more inclusive with things like statues and sculpture, because it does add something that people as tourists or whatever, when they come, they see these things and they want to look at them and they want to see some history and that sort of thing. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And if I could, I just have a question. I see the star on here of where the location is, and I'm assuming that's on the other side of the fence.
No, it would be on the front side of the fence. So they wanted, when we met on site, they wanted to be visible from the street. We also did not want to place it inside the playground because we didn't really want it to become a piece of playground equipment. So it's something that you would visit either on your way to the baseball fields or to the playground.
Okay,
Be
all right.
kind of a stop in between the parking lot and the destination.
Okay. And I will say the favorite part of this sculpture is the feet. I mean, is this something that we have to send forward to full council or?
Just if I could request to speak, the skating banana, I don't think we had any disagreements with. It was where the skating banana was going to be located. That was the issue. Somebody's got a banana fetish, but I think they're great. And this one I think is particularly great, and I think the chosen location is wonderful. So just to make sure that we don't have anything against bananas,
No, we don't.
you know, some of us are bananas, but we're okay.
Do we actually need to vote on that or just give them the permission?
I think what we've done in the past is we've actually accepted the donation. And, you know, if you wanted to put this full council, then council as a whole can just accept that donation from Sculpture in the South.
Yes, I'll make that motion. We send it to full.
I'll
council for
I'll
acceptance.
second that.
The second item on the agenda is discussion on contracting out Gahagan Park concession stand for 2023. We would like to outsource the concession stand at Gahagan, starting with the spring 2023 season. Last year, we have really struggled with getting part-time staff, keeping part-time staff. We did not have, and we're not able to get enough to even open the concession stand for the fall of 2022. What we would request is that we're able to advertise to the public to see if there is any interest in contracting for the concession stand. We would accept letters of interest and then select from those who apply based on several factors, their experience, proposed menu, length in business, et cetera. And then we would ask for $1,000 per season as a fee for the use of that concession space.
Anybody have anything to speak on that?
So if I understand you correctly, you're interested in contracting it out for the benefit of town, and you have different organizations contractors bid on it.
Well, we would advertise it to just open it up to the public, advertise it and
Mhm.
accept letters of anyone who is interested and then select from those.
Sounds great to me. I don't have a problem with that.
Does anybody have anything else? We'll have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
I'd like to call the Planning Development Committee meeting to order. Ms. Jessie?
Thank you, Mr. Jenkins. The first item on the agenda is petition by Mad Dog Development LLC to annex Dorchester County TMS number 152-00000051, which is 3.83 acres located off Flood Airs Road, currently zoned MUC Mixed Use Community District in Dorchester County, and will be zoned UCMX Urban Corridor Mixed Use upon annexation into the town of Somerville's municipal limits. This would be in Council District 5. Planning Commission held a public hearing and made a recommendation for approval at their meeting on December 19th, 2022. I didn't know if you wanted me to go ahead and read item B as well, since they kind of go together.
Please.
There's also a petition by Ayako and Terry W. Richburg to annex Dorchester County TMS number 152-0102-007, 13.24 acres located at 116 Flood Airs Road, currently zoned R1 Single Family Residential in Dorchester County, and will be zoned UCMX Urban Corridor Mixed Use upon annexation into the town of Somerville's municipal limits. This would also be in Council District 5, and Planning Commission held a public hearing and made a recommendation for approval at their meeting on December 19th, 2022. Just a little kind of orient y'all to the site. So as you can see, this is going, will be fronting, actually the currently fronts Flood Airs Road, but it will be fronting the Brown G. Myers Parkway extension. It is adjacent to the Limehouse Village subdivision. And they are proposing, I think I included the conceptual plan, a mix of commercial and apartments.
And is it possible to move this up to show a delineation of what's going on the property? Do we have that, Beth? It was in our
Package.
packet. Okay. I think we can work without it. Any questions of anybody on council? I've got a comment that I'd like to make, but go ahead. The I guess I had two thoughts when I looked at this. One was where apartments were and was that going to create a traffic issue, which is I guess a potential negative. But the other side is this is where the town of Somerville would want apartments to be being built. So I think that outweighs it. The only thing that I noticed is there was a small piece of property that was going to be commercial. And that's why I was asking for the other thing. But if we're looking at, I think it's the top of this by Flood Ayers Road, for that, the top of that to be commercial all the way across. If that could be considered, I think that would be beneficial to the town, but I think it would also help the traffic impact analysis that will be gotten. So if that's something that could be considered, I think it would be beneficial.
And I just like to say I agree with you. I think it should be. I'm not in favor of apartments much anyway, but we have them here and people seem to want them. That if we could get that commercial, that would help go a long way to help the town support some of these people, if not all.
I'm not sure how we make a motion. I want to send this to full council for consideration, but for consideration based on
Adjustment.
that adjustment.
Okay. I know the applicant is, our representative for the applicant is present, so I don't know if you'd like them to speak towards.
Yeah,
that
that'd be
request.
great. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Good evening. My name is Nicole Scott. I'm with Nexon Pruitt. And I've also got the engineer of record and the developer here if there are questions that I can't answer. The site plan is in a state of change. I mean, so we are willing to consider and look at your suggestion and see if we can make that work with the pro forma. But until we actually look at it, unfortunately, we can't absolutely commit to it tonight. But I can tell you that it is something that they're definitely willing to consider. Understanding, I believe what you're asking for is that whole frontage be commercial, correct?
Yes, and the other part of the drawing that I saw, if my memory is correct, shows a right-hand portion as I'm looking at it upside down. The right-hand portion there was the commercial portion. Then there's an entrance through the middle, I believe. And then there's a left-hand portion that was shown to be apartments. And that is the section I'm talking about turning into commercial. Sure.
Is that the exhibit that you were looking at?
That is correct. And maybe I can show this to the other two members. This was what was coming in as commercial. This was going to be apartments. This is the thing, and that's the entrance. I'm suggesting that this become commercial.
Okay. The blue block area. I sat down with
And while you're looking, if I could ask Russ a question. Russ, as we plan these, are we planning for 17A to be 4-lane?
I've seen it. We've seen it.
I think that would be a good idea. It's coming. I mean, but I looked at it. I'm good. Yeah.
The council be open to having commercial on the water floor and parking some upper floor. Just to get the community found up and also bring in some revenue to the town. We need to look at the form and see how the numbers work. I just wanted to, if that's an option for us, to get it there.
I don't know why we wouldn't entertain it. I would come back with a couple of proposals and let's see what works best. I just think we want more commercial on that. From my perspective, that we want more commercial, and you're not going to have many 2-story commercial buildings unless you're lawyers and doctors and stuff like that. which is not really what we're looking for, despite loving lawyers and doctors, of course.
You gotta be careful.
Can I say something? I'm looking at Dr. Conner. So- Yeah. Just a little tidbit I'd like to say, the town's growing. And one of the things that we're gonna face in the near future is the affordable housing problem. What you're planning to build, is it gonna be expensive apartments, or it's gonna fit people that affordable or? I'm sorry?
Average price of the market. So not a high end or a low end, but.
Well, I just bring that up as something for us all to be thinking about as we move forward. I know it, when a developer comes and they've got to meet certain requirements to make it work, I understand that. But I think as a town, we need to be thinking in terms of what we're going to be dealing with in the future as far as, affordable housing too. So we need to be thinking in terms of that. I spoke with a gentleman out of Atlanta who's building, supposed to build right on Cedar Street, Terry. Cedar and Highway 78, and I think they're planning to build affordable housing. I was so pleased to hear that. So I think it's something we need to think in terms of. Thank you, gentlemen.
Mr. Chair, quick question regarding the process and where we are in the process. A traffic study would be conducted at
Yes,
what point?
the
When they
traffic
get
study
to the final
has-
plat phase
has
or initial?
started. So I don't know with the request and them needing to look at their pro forma, I don't know if it may be best to defer rather than try and make a decision without all the information available. Would y'all be available? for deferring the decision? So maybe if we defer this to next month, that way they have a chance to look at what they can do in order to make y'all a little more
I think that makes
amenable to
sense.
the.
I'll make a motion to defer. Oh, sorry.
And I'm not on the committee, but if we're deferring, I would like to just express some concerns that I have about the annexation that maybe can be corrected. The first thing that jumps out at me was that it's outside of our planning area. We have annexed outside of our planning area, but we rarely do. Second thing is that it's, I assume, only being built because of the Berlin G. Myers, and the opponents or critics of the Berlin G. Meyer extension, their most coherent and cogent criticism was going to open up new areas to development. And of course, the response was, oh, no, that's not the point of it. But my primary concern is the fiscal impact. If I'm reading it right, we project that over 20 years, we will provide $8 million worth of services to the residents of these apartments and only collect $5 million in revenue. I'm just personally, I can't vote for that. If they're coming back with, a new proposed site plan that includes more commercial, I mean, the objective ought to be to at least break even. I don't know why we would annex anything that doesn't at least break even, but really I'd rather be netting $2 or $3 million before we expand outside of our planning area. But that's just my thoughts.
I agree.
I agree with that.
Certainly.
I will get you updated figures. We actually discovered a math error in our Excel spreadsheet right before the meeting. So we were going to relook at those and resubmit as well on those. It just didn't get caught before we submitted it. So hopefully the numbers, once we run them, will be more to your liking.
Thank you.
Motion to defer this item to next month.
I'll make a motion that we defer to next month.
Second.
All in favor, raise your hand by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes.
The final item on the agenda is the request to rezone TMS number 137-1405-013, 800 South Main Street, approximately 0.47 acres and owned by John Thomas Wayne Beasley from GR2 General Residential to NMX Neighborhood Mixed Use. This is in Council District 3. Planning Commission held a public hearing and made a recommendation for approval at their meeting on December 19th, 2022.
Questions from the committee? I have one question, suggestion. I have no problem myself with the end use. My understanding is, and correct me, Ms. Schuler, but in changing the zoning, it allows the property to be subdivided, which it currently cannot be subdivided. And so my suggestion is that we ask the owners to put a deed restriction on this to restrict subdivision of the property before we approve rezoning. And I'm not sure if that's a motion or needs to be a motion, but it can be.
And I'll ask Ms. Schuler, does the property owner have a timeline with which this decision needs to be approved?
I mean, they are looking to purchase the property and their purchase agreement is contingent upon the rezoning. So I'm sure there is a due diligence period that is going to end.
Then instead of pushing this beyond, can we make a motion approving it with a deed restriction limiting that? Is that within our? You feel comfortable? We could approve it that way, and then if they want to come back, they would need to come back.
I would look at GW to ask if that's
Let me ask you something, Jesse, just because of questions.
Yeah.
I've had calls on this.
Yes, sir.
You know, what we got there now is a frame shop.
Yes, sir.
If we change the zoning, what can go there?
So the neighborhood mixed use zoning allows for, small retail use, which is what the frame shop currently is. It allows for professional offices such as a lawyer's office, that sort of thing. It allows for a small restaurant. It does not allow for a bar. It does not allow for like a tattoo parlor or anything like that.
Excuse me, but I can't hear you. You say a small restaurant,
Yes, sir. It could be a restaurant, but it does not allow for a bar.
right?
You also couldn't have a bar just because of the proximity to the school. So that does limit some of the uses as well. It would still allow for a residence, if someone chose to make that building a residence, but, those are the main, it allows for like a personal service. If someone wanted to do a salon or a nail salon or something like that, it could be that. But those are the main uses that it would allow for.
But what Wayne wants to do here is split the property, is what you're saying?
No, sir. No, there's a law firm that wants to purchase the building,
Yeah.
but that would be considered a change of use because currently it's considered a retail use as a frame shop. A law firm is a professional office, so it's a change of use, which isn't allowed on a non-conforming use property.
Yeah.
So that's why they would either have to rezone or they couldn't occupy the building unless they just made no changes to the building whatsoever, which is kind of impossible with the way it's currently set up. It's kind of just one big shell. So the law firm isn't proposing to add any additions or, subdivide. I think the neighbors are concerned about what may happen in the future with the neighborhood mixed use zoning if the law firm decides to sell to someone else who then wanted to subdivide it, that sort of thing. So I think that's where Terry's idea of the deed restriction to prevent subdivision in the future would, I think, make the neighbors at least feel much more comfortable with the rezoning.
Yeah, what I think we ought to do is look into this a little bit before we really make a decision and see what can happen if, before we make a decision down the road. Just to see, because what we got here now is a frame shop that fits in good. That's a highly upscale residential community right there. Something that I don't think a restaurant would fit good in. I've had a good many residents in that community call me. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I just think that we need to get together. The committee needs to get together and talk about it before we make a drastic commitment in the change in the zoning. I think y'all need to study it and discuss it. Maybe have a public hearing on it or whatever we need to do before we make a decision on what we do in this area in the historical district of Somerville. We need to really know let Jesse really explain what can go there and in the future and what can go there now before we make a decision on rezoning what we're looking at doing here. Anyway, that's just my 2 cents worth. And that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Jesse, the property as it is now, it's in the historic district, correct?
Yes, sir. So yeah.
So could the property be subdivided with the frame shop actually located there?
It can't be subdivided now because it's zone GR2 and it's not large enough to
Right.
meet the minimum lot size of 20,000 square feet, more than one.
But if you rezoned it to NMX, even though that would legally allow for a subdivision, practically, could the subdivision take place with the building still located there?
I mean, you could subdivide it. I'm not sure if you could build anything else feasibly that the BAR would approve.
Well, what I'm getting at is the BAR would have to approve demolition of the building to have 2 equal size lots or
Correct. And I guess the issue with NMX is it doesn't have a minimum lot size.
right.
So I think what the neighbors were concerned with is that someone could just kind of subdivide it off the little building and then do something with the rest of the property. I still think it would be very difficult to get something approved by the BAR on that rest of that property that would fit in with the historic district.
Thank you.
I'm happy for us to take a little bit more time on this, but a question, Jesse. The way the building is now, what else is allowed there? It seems to me that a lot is allowed there now anyhow. I'm just asking.
Yeah, currently the way the building is now and the current non-conforming use, but it's been a use since since the building was built, is a retail use. So I mean, it could basically be any type of retail other than, obviously I can't sell alcohol, but any type of retail currently. So if the frame shop closed, it could be any other type of retail other than obviously adult retail or a vape shop or alcohol.
So if we would get this with the deed restriction, it would be limiting it much further than it is now.
No, it wouldn't be limiting the uses per se. It would be limiting the subdivision.
Well, that's what I mean. Somebody could put in a restaurant or something like that.
They
at
could
this
try to, it's not a very feasible layout and location for a restaurant. I think it would be hard for someone to make a go of it as a restaurant.
Well, I mean, that's the,
Technically, it would be allowed to be a restaurant, but I think it would be, I don't think it would be a financially sound option for someone to do that unless they had some very unique way to run it.
I guess I'm just trying to settle the fears of the neighbors. And
And then as far as the non-conforming uses, I understand if somebody, you know, the frame shop just so happens, oh no, actually the frame shop is a tenant, correct? If as part of this, some sale, a new tenant came in immediately and started operating in retail, they can continue that non-conforming use. But I mean, is it a year or how much time is it that where the use expires if it's not being?
So the way our ordinance currently reads, it is either there's an obvious change in use or a use is the non-conforming use is discontinued. I believe it's for 3 consecutive months.
So it's less than a year, and that's an issue. I mean, at some point, this building is going to have to be renovated by
Yeah, the
someone.
building is in unfortunately a pretty good state of disrepair. I'll put it bluntly. And the current applicant, the law firm, is willing to put a significant amount of money to rehabilitate the building as it is. Like, they don't want to change what it looks like, except for some minor things, like they'd have to replace the awning and stuff like that, but and replace broken windows and things of that nature. But they don't want to put any additions on the building. They don't want to significantly, I mean, they want to change the parking lot so that it can be safely navigated, but they don't want to, you know, significantly expand the parking lot, any of that stuff. They like the look and feel of the historic building. That's one reason why they want to be in this location.
So if this owner or a subsequent owner were to undergo renovations and a business not occupy it or operate out of it for 90 days, now it can only be used as a residence.
Yes, sir.
Forever, or until it's rezoned.
Until it's rezoned, yes, sir.
Okay.
To continue the discussion, I make a motion that we move this item forward to full council with a deed restriction to prevent subdivision in future years.
I'll second that.
Motion and a second been made. All in favor, raise your hand by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No, passes. Motion to adjourn. Let me turn. the
I'll make a
page.
motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Call to order the regular meeting of the Public Safety Committee. Only item on the agenda is the discussion of town prosecutorial services. Chief Wright, I believe you may be responsible for this being on our agenda.
I may. Yes, sir. Council, Chair. So, brought before council executive session, last month in reference to, the town of Somerville and the need for a full-time prosecutorial service or full-time prosecutor to prosecute cases for the police department and code enforcement. The town has grown exponentially in the years past, from where we started with a part-time prosecutor. We currently have a part-time prosecutor who is a litigator here in town, and he currently has to tend to his business full-time, which, as the town has continued to grow, the services that we provide to the town have grown as well. Among those services is prosecution of different types of criminal cases. And the way it works right now is we have regular traffic court that occurs weekly. We also have domestic violence court that occurs monthly. And then on top of that, we have DUI court for impaired drivers, which occurs monthly as well, to include different types of bond hearings, that we have to be present for every single day. And also includes, which the solicitor's office augments us, obviously with our pre-trials when we have preliminary hearings. But as we've grown, our services have grown, the more people that are here, the people that visit, the more people we're going to end up citing or criminally charging. And one of the shortfalls that this profession has seen, not Somerville Police Department per se, but the entire profession is, it's a very young profession now. And I can remember back when I was on the road being a police officer, that everybody who wore a uniform had been to a jury trial, or they've been involved in circuit court cases in General Sessions Court. And unfortunately, that is not the case any longer. Most police officers in the profession right now locally are 5 years or less. We currently have a shortfall of police officers in South Carolina by 5,000. And because of that, our police officers lack experience now in courtroom settings. They have just enough to get them out there and be dangerous in a courtroom. And what we're seeing is officers lose cases for being ill prepared, not have been properly trained. They're not attorneys. Certainly other municipalities and counties in the area do have prosecutors, both part-time and full-time. But I propose that we do this for many reasons, which I've said, but also our dockets are backed up because of COVID. And the court administrator for South Carolina has come down to all the judges in South Carolina, magistrates and city court judges, and have told them to move their dockets. So all of the cases you're seeing there, we're having to get those cases, not us, the criminal justice system in the court the judicial system have to move those cases. And what happens then is obviously we need to have somebody that's available more often. And when you have a part-time prosecutor who runs a business, they've got to take care of their business. And that's a priority for them. And it would be for me too. So what that happens is we end up having officers that work different hours, days, nights. They send emails. A lot of them go unanswered for long periods of time before leading up to court. So our officers are not prepared and prepped the way they should be. And our agency has grown. So I think with this would have less continuances of cases. We have a lot of continuances that just keep going on the docket, going on the docket, going on the docket. It actually backs up the court and the process with them. But I also think we'll have better service to our citizens by having a prosecutor. I also think internally, it would be profound for the police department to have somebody as an actual voice between the court and us, and somebody who understands litigation, trial law, and has actually tried cases with they're a previous public defender or prosecutor, assistant solicitor. I'm not thinking that we need to have anybody with 20 years experience. I just think somebody who's been out of law school and has served in a capacity in court, like I've stated, would be a tremendous asset to the town. I just think with the growth we're seeing and the types of cases and challenges that we're seeing in this profession, that is why I'm asking that you all consider this.
Chief, a couple of questions. Presently, I think you'd agree with me that the most important, all cases are important, but the most important cases in municipal court are domestic violence and DUI.
Yes, sir.
And after that, you've got assault and battery third, which we used to call simple assault and battery, shoplifting. I don't know how much simple possession of marijuana we have anymore, but those would be the typical cases that this prosecutor, full-time prosecutor would handle. Would you agree with that?
Yes, sir. And those are usually the cases, as you know, that become jury trials or go on longer than.
Well, that was my next question. With our current part-time prosecutor, is he handling the case whether a jury trial request is made or not, or only if there's a jury trial request?
He handles the case if it's a jury trial request. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, okay. Because I do think that it would be helpful for the town to have a prosecutor that had the time to handle cases, whether or not a jury trial request was made. I mean, as a trial lawyer who's been on both sides of the equation on criminal law, I mean, there are often attempts to avoid dealing with a prosecutor and to make the officer try his own case. And what you're describing with officers really not knowing how to try their own case, that's not a Somerville Police Department problem. That's across the state. The other, I guess, that was my primary question.
Yes, sir. And to speak more on that, oftentimes police officers, they understand how to prosecute a case. They understand, you have to provide and present evidence. But what they may not understand is the rules of the court. And there's so many rules in a court setting that the police don't know about. Now, the average citizen does not either. But it becomes very difficult for a police officer to prosecute a case without a litigator being present when I've got a public defender standing there who is really good, which there's actually some really good ones here, that will eat us up and tear us up alive, and we don't stand a chance. And the judge has no choice but to rule on who presented the better case and prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. So I just think that it would be very advantageous for us as a town to take that step.
Chief, are we talking a person or a service?
A person, full-time employee staff that would be assigned under, I would assume, GW's office or.
And that reminds me of my other comment more than a question. And I commend you, Chief, for kind of bringing this to my attention again, because I thought the issue had been corrected. Some long before you were chief, at some point, the part-time prosecutor got put under the police department's budget. And I think that if we're talking about,
that's a conflict of interest.
It's a conflict of interest. And the prosecutor, even though we want, money's always an issue. It's always an issue with me, if you know me. But if we want a professional prosecutor, we also want an independent prosecutor. So I think that's what serves the ends of justice. And to have a prosecutor essentially being paid by the police department is something we need to stop.
Absolutely.
Whether we find the money for a full-time prosecutor or not. So I appreciate you bringing it to my attention at an executive session, because I thought that had been corrected back in 2011, 2012 sometime.
Yeah, and I think to finish my first question, the concern I have is night court. I think we need it not only because of the load of the court, but the load that puts on our police officers when they work all night long and then got to work the next day. That's not fair to our
And I believe that's on
officers.
the agenda for full council Thursday, if I'm not mistaken. And I believe Judge Jameson is going to speak to that, but I am 100% in agreement with you. Now, whether the logistics are there for that to occur, I'll let y'all decide that on Thursday, but absolutely.
Chief, I did just want to clarify that has been pulled from Thursday's
Okay,
agenda,
forgive me for that,
but
as I was,
but it will come up at some point.
but thank you for your forward thinking. Yes.
Yeah, it'll come up very soon.
So if I understand you correctly, Chief Partner, right now we've got a part-time prosecutor. And the growth of the town and the service that we need a full-time prosecutor.
Yes, sir.
And it's amazing that we've been getting, the service that we need, because the prosecutor is working full-time, in his business. It's going to be difficult for him to take care of the town's business. So I think it's something we definitely need to address. We just need to figure out a way to do it and figure out what we can find there. Another thing too, you feel that one full-time legal person would be able to handle all of this?
I do. At this time, I do. In the future, I can't foresee or tell you that, but we do right now. And I commend our current prosecutor for sticking it out like he has, with what little pay he has made, and with the amount of time he has committed to the town. But times have changed, and it's time for us to change as a town moving forward. And I believe that at least 1/3 of his salary, or the salary of a full-time, would come out of what we already have budgeted, which we've moved from underneath my budget, hopefully underneath or with a vote from council.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we forward this item to full council for further understanding and discussion. From me with a recommendation to approve.
I'll second that.
Got a motion and a second, and I would just say that, you know, I think it's going to happen. The question is, are we ready to do it now and or in the 24 budget? But, you know, this is inevitable. And so are we ready to bite the bullet now or kick the can down the road another year or so? I think those are our only real options. But with that, you know, no other discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Hmm.
On the motion, aye. So there are no nays. Are there any other business for the committee? If not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Kicking that can for about 15 years now.
Okay, we'd like to open up the Public Works Committee.
Evening. Two items tonight, Public Works Committee. First is staff received a request from Bike Walk Somerville for a leading pedestrian interval at the intersections of Richardson and Cedar and Richardson and Main Street. Does everyone know what a leading pedestrian interval is?
No.
But I'll try to explain, but if I fall short of that, there's a video to help that too. A leading pedestrian interval is when someone approaches a crosswalk like the ones we have at Main and Richardson, pushes the button across the street. When their time comes to cross, all approaches to the intersection go red. All the lights go red, so everyone stops for a few seconds. Typically 3 to 7 seconds is the time. And it allows that pedestrian to get out in the traffic so they're seen by the motorist. And then the cycle continues. It still has the same amount of time they would, but that additional 3 or 4 seconds. So it's a safety. It's an effort to increase safety, improve safety for pedestrians at busy intersections such as these. I've reached out to DOT. They would do it upon our request. Their policy is if it affects traffic at an intersection, that the local municipality would make the request, and they could do it for no cost, just a matter of reprogramming the signal software.
So we can watch the video then?
It's about a 4-minute video if you want to watch it. Or if you don't need to watch it.
No, I guess. So.
Can you email it to us?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't want to see it. But
Email it to us.
I'll forward it. I'll forward it to everyone.
Space and Rocket Center.
I guess the question is, do we want to ask DOT to implement this leading pedestrian interval with these 2 intersections or not?
So if I'm understanding this, maybe I have this wrong, because if I'm the way I'm understanding it, I'm not sure that I see that it's safer. Depends on who's in the vehicle, I guess. So the pedestrian pushes a button and it gives them a 3 or 4 second head start before someone could turn into their path. Is that essentially it?
So that's another issue.
Okay.
There could be a right turn restriction that's not been considered here. But what it does is it stops all 4 approaches to the intersections. Everyone stops for 3 or 4 seconds. We could or could not put a right turn restriction on red. That's another thing.
What happened? I mean, so I think if I'm understanding the concept, that it gets the pedestrian out there, gives them a 3 or 4 second head start, and then somebody's got a green light after that 4 seconds, correct?
But it won't be conflicting with the pedestrian. It'll be the cross street. So if you If you come out and approach Main Street in Richardson in front of Town Hall, you want to cross Main Street. And so you get your signal to walk across Main Street for 4 seconds. And then it goes back into the cycle. It's going to allow the Richardson Avenue traffic to proceed while Main Street is still stopped. So at
I-
that point, you're out there in the middle of a lane. So hopefully any right turn motorists is gonna see you.
Right.
2.5 feet per second is the average speed, so that's 8 feet. If it's 4 seconds, you're 3/4 the way through a lane.
I had this issue just this weekend. So I was at Stallsville and Bacon's Bridge. And I was on foot and I was crossing over to get something and then coming back. And I pushed my light to walk across is green, but the left turn lane on Stallsville coming onto Bacon's Bridge, I mean, that lane gets clogged up with cars. They just kept on coming and I could never cross the street. So by the time they were done, my green light was gone and I couldn't cross the street. And I waited through like 3 cycles. And finally I thought, I'm running, I'm going to cross. And so yes, if it gives the pedestrian at least 4 seconds to cross and at least to get halfway across the street before the light turns green the opposite way to make that turn. I'm for it.
May I
I
speak?
just feel like we're coaxing somebody out in the intersection and then changing it on them. I mean, the worst, we've all been in traffic when somebody like waves you across and you're having to like
Nobody waves
trust
you
them to
across.
know that
I mean,
it's safe for
if
you.
you're out there, you basically get, you get now, I think 17 seconds to cross the road. You get 4 additional seconds. And when that 4 seconds, no one is supposed to be moving.
Which would have helped me tremendously.
It
Chairman, may I-
really is just an extension of that delay
And that's something.
between the lights. It just extends that only when a pedestrian,
Right, only when it's triggered.
everything else functions the same. It just gives you a little bit longer all red time to get moving.
So so the issue with the person turning into it is there, whether it's 17 seconds or 21 seconds. All right, I'm good.
Kimma, may I speak for a second?
Yeah.
I think like both the lights at Beverly and Midland Parkway, I usually walk to Publix. And even when it says green to walk, I end up like Kimma. The traffic never stops at that intersection for more than 5 seconds. And tonight on the way here, I pulled up, I was 3 cars back, stopped for a red light. All 3 cars stopped. And a guy came from behind us down the right-hand lane, ripping through the light.
Councilman Jackson, that sounds like an enforcement issue to me.
But I think that intersection is just, and I've asked before to enhance the crossing there. We've had a couple of people get killed, at least 2. And I think we need to look at it citywide. Because it's confusing when to walk.
I think that we need to look at more intersections for this same thing. I imagine we have several in Somerville that have these same problems.
Do we want to proceed with these 2 as the request tonight?
Do we need to send this to full council?
Don't think so.
So the request is simply to authorize you to make the request of DOT.
Correct.
Oh, okay,
I think we can tell you,
we can do that.
the 3 of us, to proceed.
And with the idea to also monitor traffic, the impact of traffic.
Yeah, so it is going to be that there's a lot of pros to this. The con's going to be, it's going to delay the cycle and heavy pedestrian times by 4 seconds. So congestion may become worse. And if that's noticed, 4 seconds is noticed, I don't know, we'll see. But in the 4 seconds, it's going to start with 4 seconds and that will be monitored. If it needs to be adjusted, it can be adjusted.
Okay.
All right, item 2, B is, this came up in November. The Berkeley Circle and Old Light Road intersection. We had a request to address the trucks running over the radius on that right turn, turning on the Berkeley Circle. We looked at it and
staff recommends increasing the size of the radius from 40 feet to 60 feet. 40 foot is a typical radius that should accommodate a truck. Most of the time it would. I don't know why it's not here, but looking at the tracks, they're running over the curb. So by pushing the radius back 60 feet, I think that will accommodate, keep those trucks in the pavement. A very small job, something we would need to contract out. Our crews don't do well with curb and gutters. I think we need to contract out this. I'd recommend we include this in this year's resurfacing contract. It's just another part of the resurfacing contract. But it will have to be funded. The town will have to fund it. Estimate right now is around $15,000, but I think if we have it in a larger contract, those numbers will come way down.
Okay.
Agreed.
Any comments, questions?
We're responsible for maintaining that curb right now,
Yes.
and all it's doing is getting destroyed. So if we move it
Especially
back,
holding up, paving the curb are good. It's just the dirt and soil behind it are torn up. But
it's just a matter of time.
Okay, is there anything else? Okay, motion
But-
to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
All in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, members of council.
All right, Ms. Rhonda, ready for your report.
Sir, I have, you have the financial report in front of you. The first page is just a summary. We collected, just under $2 million in revenue, for the month, bringing our total for the year to just over 11 million. We'll start to see an increase in that number starting this month. I think we're probably scheduled to get our Dorchester County taxes, our first large item this week. On the expenditures, they total $7 million for the month for a total of just under 25 million. Included in there under capital expenditures is 3.7, which includes the Dominion building. That accounted for 3.5, I believe, that total. Deficit for the year at this point is just under 14 million.
Ms. Rhonda, real quick, on the expenditure slide,
Yes, sir.
I know we're 50% through the year and we're 60% through our expenditures. Are our expenditures front end loaded slightly, like our revenues are delayed?
I think the, if you look at each line item,
Mhm.
they're right at 50. I believe the total is represented because capital expenditures are so high,
Right.
is why that is actually 60%. So it looks like we're kind of on target. The expenditures in most cases should not lag, like the revenue
I
does.
didn't think so. Okay, thank you.
And I was gonna comment just that, we are 50% through the year. There are a couple of departments that have spent 50% of their expenditures, a couple at 49%, but I see some 44s, some 41s, and even a 34% in administration, Madam Administrator, and that just kind of warms my heart.
It kind of terrified me. I hope there's not a mistake in there.
As long as it's correct, it warms my heart.
I'm working another year right now, so. No, I think because we certainly have made an effort to minimize things, I'm hoping that is accurate. Next. Yeah. The revenue is some little bit of detail on that. Property taxes, like I say, we're starting to get that in. License and permits, we're a little bit lighter on those. I think that that's probably, the business licenses will come in later. I don't know that we will expect quite as robust building permits as we have seen lately. So we might see some fluctuation in that. Certainly December is not a big month for that anyhow. Municipal court, that's running right on schedule. Our state revenues, those come in periodically, some quarterly, some monthly. So we got local option sales tax money. Next. Miscellaneous,
We didn't have much in miscellaneous this month, total of 30, just under 34,000. Of course, the big item that's still included in here is the sale of Century 21 property in there. And our transfers in, all we've done internally at this point is transfer from HAT. So we haven't done any ARPA or anything like that for the revenues. Questions?
The Century 21 sale proceeds are not accounted for by this.
They are, but they're in year to date, so that
Okay.
like we got just under $2 million in that. Okay. Impact fees, we collected just under 14,000 in impact fees for residential, no commercial. Again, December usually typically a pretty light month on that. But year to date, we have we're net revenues over expenditures of just under 600,000. Hospitality, we collected 434,000 this month in hospitality income. Our expenses, which includes mainly the transfer to the general fund, were 328,000. Our total year to date for hospitality and accommodations is just 3.1. We budgeted 5 million, so we're a little bit ahead of the game there. Again, this is generally November activity. So probably have a little slowdown in January. Next month should be okay, but a little bit of a slowdown. And stormwater, we had a little bit of tax revenue come in, or fees collected by the counties, 251,000. So we're still year to date, our expenditures exceed our revenues. That should start to flip this month. Any comments, questions?
Ms. Rhonda, just to make sure that I'm clear, and we don't need to go back, but there was $11 million in revenue and $24 million in expenses. Therefore, in round numbers, we've pulled down fund balance by $13 million during the first 6 months of the year. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's how that acts.
Thank you.
That's our biggest use of, spend down of fund balance. So, just as a theoretical, because our fiscal year now is the end of June, that is really the highest point our fund balance will ever be. So when we think about our fund balance, we need to think about the fact that we are going to need that money to spend it down until some of our revenues in the spring. So,
Thank you.
anything else? Thank you.
Thanks, Ron.
All right, Mr. Mayor, now we're going to do just a very quick update on the status of our strategic plan action items. As you recall, we had 2 half-day planning sessions back in October and came away with 4 priorities. And we had several of those priorities that were in the 0 to 90-day time frame. So we just wanted to touch base with you and let you know where we are with some of those items. So one of the things you wanted us to do was to conduct an economic development analysis of both the Dominion and the Berlin G. Myers properties. That analysis is in process and we should get that by the end, excuse me, at the end of the month, and hopefully be able to present that to you at the February meeting. You also asked us to develop a temporary plan for use by the Somerville Police Department. That's complete. As a matter of fact, I believe we have several employees who have already moved over to that facility, and you've got a very happy chief sitting back there. I know he's very pleased to have that extra space that he has to work with. You also asked us to explore options with Dorchester County as a possible use for a future municipal court. I did have a conversation with Jason Ward a few weeks ago. He did share with me that they're still at least a couple of years out from making any final plans for that property. But at least he did share that I don't think it's their intention to keep that historic portion of that building. You know, there's been some discussion about maybe keeping part of the facade as, you know, a decorative piece or something like that. But, and we did also talk about whether or not using that primary piece of real estate in Somerville as a public building, if that was really its highest and best use. So at any rate, I think we can probably go ahead and cross that option off as a possible use of or possible future location for municipal court. Next slide, please. You also asked us to identify potential areas of revenue loss and explore uses of specific revenue line items to allocate to a capital fund. That is in process, and we will have some more discussion about that at the February meeting. And in the meantime, we do plan to hold meetings with the department heads. We're going to specifically revisit our CIP, look at some capital needs that we were not able to fund in this current year budget, take another look at that, and also get a jump start on capital needs for FY24. So that is also in process. And we are looking at possible amendments to our fund balance policy, and that is slated to come before you for your consideration in February. Next slide. So under economic development, you asked us to better define the role and position requirements for that position and to rewrite the job description. That is complete. You also asked for the mayor and the administrator to reach out to the counties to discuss key development projects. The mayor and I have had several productive discussions with John Trueluck with Dorchester County. So those discussions will be continuous and ongoing, and we will be reaching out to both Berkeley and Charleston counties to make sure that lines of communication stay open. Next slide. And then under staffing, recruitment and retention, you asked us to review and update our recruitment strategies. We recently transitioned our job postings from our current system to a new ADP system. The advantage to that is the moment it goes into our system, it's automatically uploaded into some national recruitment sites. And I can tell you, at least the feedback I've gotten, particularly from Public Works, is that we've increased the number of applications that we've been receiving tremendously. So I think that was a good move. You asked us to conduct an employee survey. That is complete. We did provide you with those results a couple weeks ago. We have also shared those results with all of the staff. And I think we were able to glean some pretty good information from that survey. You also asked us to identify our immediate needs and review some compensation gaps. That is in process, and we'll bring some ideas back to you for consideration. I believe that's slated for the March meeting. And I think that's it. Again, just wanted to give you guys an update as far as where we were in this first 90 days. And if there are no questions, you do have a question.
The discussion with the county administrator, were we requesting a temporary relocation of the municipal court to the old county council chambers, or was this more of an idea of a permanent relocation?
It was more of an idea of a permanent location if, you know, they were planning to preserve that historic portion of that building, because I know that they had grand plans for that site.
Okay, so we were talking about the actual original 1930s hospital building, not that I think the newest addition to that complex may be where the council chambers is in the back.
Right.
But if I'm understanding you correctly, the county may be a couple of years away, but they're not thinking they're going to try to preserve the historic 1930s hospital building?
I believe so. Yeah, that's
That'll-
correct.
That'll
Yeah.
make for interesting times for the BAR.
That's still a couple years out, so yeah.
Lisa,
Mhm.
I may have been confused. I thought that we were going to be asking for short-term, whatever short-term was, while the county was developing a plan for the property to use council chambers for a court.
That was not my understanding from that meeting.
Well, I guess I would ask council if, did somebody excuse me, feel differently than that was the only place I knew we could have a court.
That was my understanding at the time. It was a long couple of days.
Yes.
I may have
Agreed.
But that's just, in my mind, that's what I thought we were doing. We were trying to get a temporary use for the court.
Are you talking about this council chambers?
No, the county council chambers.
Oh, well, I think that what county council, from what I've talked to, Chris, is they're trying to get permission from the BAR to demolish that whole building. So there won't be any county council chambers down there.
Well,
So
maybe we're using different words to mean different things. I don't know when they're going to tear it down. I don't think they know when they're going to tear it down or what they're going to tear down. The question I thought we were asking was, while it still exists, might we use it on a temporary basis, the main council chambers, to hold court?
I did not ask that question, but I certainly can.
I think that would be worth pursuing to find out where we might be able to be short-term. Sorry, we were not clear in how we put that question forward.
So I know that we did discuss that, Terry, using whatever we could use in the original part of that building for court. We did talk about that.
Well, I mean, I don't want to speak for the county, but whether the Somerville BAR approves demolition of the historic hospital building or not, I've always believed it's the county's intention to no longer own any of that block. They would sell all of it, and it's just a question of whether the purchaser would want to preserve the original building or need to preserve the original building or not. I don't think the county wants to own anything on that block once the.
But I think what we need to decide is nothing to do with the county. We need to decide is what we're gonna do with the Dominion property with the court. This is, I've been saying this for a long, long time now. And if we're not gonna move the court over into the old fire station, then let's leave the court where it is here in the town hall until y'all decide what you're gonna do with it. I'm gonna be gone in 12 months. I wanted to move the court over there because that's where it'll go and it'll work fine, and we can have two courtrooms and we can move on for the next 5 or 10 years, just like you plan to do here for a short period of time. I mean, while we're working this short period of time, we eating up years. Years, people.
We did try to say in those planning discussions, Chief Wright and others, that we gave a working definition of temporary as 3 years.
Doing the same thing right now.
Because in the past, we've said, as you said, Mr. Mayor, in the past, we've said temporary, and the next thing we know, a decade has gone by.
Right. Okay, well, it'll happen again, and I'll be on the outside watching them, but I will be over here, Mr. Mayor, if you get elected, pointing my finger at you, saying and Mr. Jenkins, if he gets elected, pointing my finger at y'all saying, okay, years are going by and the court's still over here where we don't need them. We got the building sitting there. We own it. We bought it. We paid for it. We need to use it for something. Let's use it for a court. Russ went over there, looked at it. He was a committee. His recommendation was, let's use it. We got, Chief Wright, raise your hand, buddy. You moved in, you damn right. We got them over there partially. Let's get the court over there partially. We can get them in there with 2 courtrooms. We don't need a night court. We already determined that, pretty much so. Mr. Jenkins and I got to talk about that with the judge. We can move over there and have 2 courtrooms going, a police department operating, all with between now and probably July or August. And what are we doing? We sitting up here talking about it since last whenever. But now we own it. It's ours. Let's do something. We got the money, don't we?
Well, what we're going to do, the first thing we have, Mayor, is we're going to get that economic analysis report. And the plan is to take that back before that committee, the municipal committee.
And I'm telling you what that's gonna do. That's gonna tell us that that property over there is worth 10 times what that property at the school's worth. But to build that police department and that courtroom from the ground up will just drown us in debt compared to what we got over there that we can put. I know the taxes and all that kind of stuff will benefit us over there in the long run. But we got it right there. We sitting on it right there. And that's what we need to do, y'all. I mean, instead, we gonna come up here. I know we'll be up here next month talking about it. Well, if we can move to court next month after that, I mean, we need to do something. We don't need to keep talking about it. We need to do something. Let's move, people.
Ricky,
I mean,
if I may make statements on 2 things, on night court, in my mind, that has more to do with the safety and health of our police officers. There's no reason somebody should work a 12-hour shift at night and then have to come back at 11 o'clock to work court. That's unfair to the employee. And then their sleep's broken when they go to work that night. So they actually get 3 days tied up in night court. And secondly, on moving to court, and I guess we're gonna shortly talk to Trey about it, and he would be perfectly happy with the old jail.
I agree. I agree, Bob. Thank you. I mean, we need to move on. It's progress.
I'd just like to say this, Mr. Mayor, I have no idea whether I'll be here after December 31st or January 3rd either. But if I am up here on this dais somewhere, I look forward to you coming to public comments and shaking your finger at me.
Thank you, sir.
Move on. And Lisa, I think that at least for clarity from my sake, I'm not choosing a position here. I'm not choosing where we should or should not be. I'm saying there are several options. One option we do not have an answer to. We may not choose to use the option. We may choose to use it. I would like to know if the option is available to us because it's a relatively free one. At least I hope it's a relatively free one. Nothing is free, but I hope it's a relatively free one. And then we sit down once we've gathered all the other information and decide what's the next step. And that needs to happen quickly. And I think that all of council and all of staff recognized that that was something that we wanted to come to a conclusion on quickly, but we wanted to come to the right conclusion. So.
Well, from what I've understood from the time we started talking about acquiring the Dominion building, that we would temporarily move the police department over there. We have the building, and we can start doing that almost immediately. As far as the county building is concerned, from what I've heard about the county building, that they plan to sell that building. But they don't plan to, they don't want any more to do with the building. But I think that it's important for us to use what we've already bought and get to the court and the police department over there so they can we can start. Now, in the night court, that's different. If we don't want to do that, we don't have to do that. But that's what I've heard from the time we started talking about this, that we were going to acquire the Dominion property, then we'd start using it temporarily for the police department. So we need to move on and do something.
Okay. If there are no other questions, Mayor, I think Rhonda is going to give us an update on American Rescue Plan.
I mean, yeah, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I think in your packet that went out on Friday, I tried to put a lot of numbers in there and confuse everybody. So anyway, I simplified this format a little bit just to show the revenue and the expenditures to date. I was trying to show what council actually approved and what it looked like, but it's essentially the same. So I apologize if that was confusing. The two tranches of ARPA total just under 7.8 million. We have for the FY22 budget, since we actually budgeted that we were going to use the 1.193 to offset loss of revenue that was allowable, we actually are going to have transferred that into the general fund from ARPA for FY22. The vaccine incentive premium pay, we capped that at, I think it was 1.443 or something was the actual motion. We came in just a little under that, of the 1.434. The home repairs of $225,000. I will have a report that I will get out to y'all next week. I do have a report from Operation Home, I think it is, and they were going to get some pictures together. They anticipate in the next quarter being able to spend the remainder of the money. What they told me. So anyway, we'll see. They had a lot of applicants, and I can't remember what they told me, but I'll get that report out next week to you all so you can see where they are and what they've spent. The mental health crisis intervention, that was a 2-year program. I think it was 2 years to fund the program. Thus far, we've spent 382. That's obviously a little more than half, but we had some equipment that was in there, some police cars and some other stuff. So we'll monitor that. I wanted to show that at this point, our balance in this is 4.5 million. The reserve for mental health crisis is obviously the encumbrance of that program that we would have to spend based on what you authorized out of that pot. You authorized to use some of the ARPA funds to build a fire station. I believe the motion was in excess of impact fees. So we do have probably a little more than the 1.3 that we can apply. That's a moving target, every month. So we can adjust that a little bit. The FY23 budget, we budgeted 1.645 to offset revenues in that particular year. If I put for discussion, and this is not for action, this is just kind of food for thought as we enter into some of these conversations about capital and other things to looking for funding. We can put some more money in this particular pot by using more impact fees and lessen the amount of this money that we use for the fire station. We also, if I can get a better handle on FY23 numbers, it might be we can repurpose some of that, the 1.645, to be available too. I believe that would probably take a budget adjustment action for that.
If I'm understanding you correctly, though, obviously your projection of revenues are conservative in the FY23 budget. So if revenues exceed projections, then if we run a surplus, it's the same as because the ARPA is sitting in fund balance now, essentially.
Yeah.
So to me, if I'm seeing this correctly, the balance of 315,000 is kind of a worst case scenario. that if impact fees are available or greater than 1.3, or if budget revenues exceed projections, the amount at the end of this time period could very well be in excess of 315. Is that
That's
fair?
correct.
Okay.
That's correct. Yeah, this is just this is where we are from what I know. Like say, the 1.6, we can certainly amend the budget to not proceed in that manner.
But Rhonda, I want to make sure hope I'm understanding this. As best we know now, as best you know now, since you put these numbers together. Between fiscal year 22 and 23, based on what we believe our revenues were and will be, we're using $2.8 million of ARPA funds to balance our budget. Is that correct?
That was our plan.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Authorization to issue a purchase order to Municipal Emergency Services in the amount of $70,989.15 for the purchase of 15 each of structural coats, pants, flash hoods, boots, and equipment bags for the upcoming recruit school personnel. Funds to come from budgeting operating funds, and the request is from the fire department.
Mayor, I make a motion that we approve this.
Second.
Motion on the floor in a second. Any discussion? All in favor of this signify by raising the right hand, voting aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. Ayes carry.
Authorization to issue a purchase order for $25,300 to Keck and Wood Incorporated for the design and permitting of a sidewalk along West First North Street to be funded by CDBG funds. Keck and Wood was selected by the RFQ method, and the request is from the Public Works Department.
I make a motion that we approve this also, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? No discussion. All in favor signify by raising the right hand, voting aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. Ayes carry.
Authorization to surplus PD Unit 257, a 2014 Dodge Charger with mileage of 117,594.
Motion. Second.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of this signify by raising right hand, voting aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. Ayes carry.
Authorization to surplus a 2009 Ford Crown Victoria vehicle R72 with mileage of 100,261.
Motion to approve this.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor of this signify by raising the right hand, voting aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. Ayes carry.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor of this signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed likewise.